Hello, listeners, and welcome to the first program in our series, Let's Learn Life Science, which is produced for grade 9 learners and anybody else who has an interest in the subject. My name is Jeandre, and today we'll learn about the binomial system. Please have a pen and a notebook ready so that you can make notes of the important points. After listening to this program, you should be able to define the binomial system as a system using a two-word Latin name, the genus and the species, to identify a specific type of organism. Note that the first letter of the genus name is capitalized, but the species name is never capitalized. Identify the organisms from a given dichotomous key. Today, I have two guests with me in studio. They are plant and animal fanatics, and they are so passionate about nature that just listening to them talking about it excites me as well. I will give them the opportunity to introduce themselves.
Hello listeners, I am Raimo and I studied environmental biology.
Hi, I'm Petra. I'm in love with nature conservation. That is the course I studied.
I'm sure that by the time we are through, we will all feel more positive and different about nature, especially animals and plants. I understand that plants and animals have scientific names that all scientists worldwide know and understand. These scientific names are referred to as the binomial system. Petra, would you like to tell us about the binomial system of naming animals?
Absolutely. The binomial system is defined as a system using a two-word Latin name, the genus and species, to identify a specific type of organism. When you write the genus name, the first letter is always capitalized, while the species name is never capitalized.
I have realized that most living organisms have a common name and also a scientific name.
Indeed, miss. The common name is often different in different countries and in different regions of the same country. So in order to allow scientists to communicate with one another across the world, scientific names were developed.
Every living organism is given a two-part scientific name that shows how it is classified. All scientific names given to living organisms are in Latin. This was an international language used in the 18th century when the system of naming we use today was established.
The system of naming organisms has rules. The first name is the name of the genus to which the organism belongs. The name starts with a capital letter. The second name is the name of the species to which the organism belongs. It must start with a small letter. The two names are underlined separately with the handwriting or in italics when typed.
Excellent. Now that we're all clear on what the binomial system of naming means, I would like to know how scientists know exactly to which species organisms belong. There are so many organisms. Sometimes I go for walks in nature and see plants or animals I've never seen before in my life. How can I identify organisms that are unknown to me?
If an unknown organism is identified, it is given its own scientific name, by scientists of course. As an individual, you can't just name an organism unless you use the common name which is used for it by the local people. In biology and life science, there's something called the dichotomous key. A dichotomous key can be used by learners to identify the organisms that are not known to them.
That's correct. A dichotomous key is a tool that consists of a series of choices that will lead a user to the correct name of an organism.
It would be best to look at an example. Let's say I have the 5 organisms that belong to the 5 classes of vertebrates, namely mammals, fish, reptiles, birds, and amphibians. The dichotomous key I will use should have 4 paired descriptions that I can use to identify all 5 organisms. The first pair reads as follows. 1A has fur, therefore a mammal. B has no fur, therefore go to 2. What you should take note of is that one of the characteristics of an organism is used in comparison. Example, has fur versus no fur. Also take note that you should be directed to the next step or characteristics in the key to get one step closer to identifying your organisms or to identify the name of an organism. For example, in my first pair, 1A, has fur and it's identified as a mammal. 1B gives me the instructions to go to pair or description number 2.
The second description reads as follows. 2A has feathers, therefore it's a bird. B has no feathers, go to 3. Take note that at this stage in the key, I am already able to identify 2 of the 5 organisms, the mammal and the bird. That leaves us with only 3 more organisms to identify. The third description reads as follows. 3A, dry skin, therefore it's a reptile. B, no dry skin, go to 4. Take note that I am able to identify another organism. Now, I only have 2 more organisms left to identify. Therefore, my last pair must be able to identify the last 2 organisms.
The last pair or description reads as follows. 4A has scales, therefore a fish. B has no scales, therefore amphibian. Now all 5 vertebrate classes were identified without any difficulty. I know it can be challenging to understand the dichotomous keys, especially if it's all new to you. So let's look at it again. The dichotomous key. 1A has fur, therefore a mammal. B has no fur, therefore go to 2. 2A has feathers, therefore a bird. B has no feathers, therefore go to 3. 3A dry skin, therefore a reptile. B no dry skin, therefore go to 4. 4A has scales, therefore a fish. B has no scales, therefore amphibian.
Let me see if I understand the use of a dichotomous key. I start with the first description and follow the instructions at the end of the description. For example, the words go to 2. These instructions guide me to the next step or lead me to the name of the class. For example, mammal.
That's correct. Using our example of the key, the first description implies that if the animal doesn't have fur, then you must go to number 2, or the second description in the key. The first description at 2 says, if it has feathers, then it is a bird. You might ask how we are able to find the answer so quickly. Well, the whole purpose of this quiz is to help individuals to get the identification of organisms as quickly as possible and without any uncertainty. That's why keys use easily identifiable and visible characteristics.
Okay, so the first description took me to 2. At 2, I identified the bird. And then any of the remaining 4 vertebrate classes that don't have feathers and are not birds took me to 3, where I found the characteristic of dry skin, which identified the reptile. 4 instructed me to look at the last characteristic of scales or no scales to identify the remaining 2 vertebrates.
Correct, miss. Reading each pair of the statements helps us decide which description is correct for each animal. We then continue reading each relevant pair of statements as directed until we are able to identify all vertebrate classes.
Wow, what an interesting topic. Unfortunately, our time has run out and we need to recap what we discussed today. Petra, would you like to close today's discussion with a summary and a question for our learners?
Absolutely. Please check your notes against the following. A binomial system is defined as a system using a 2-word Latin name, the genus and species, to identify a specific type of organism. The first letter of the genus name is capitalized, but the species name is never capitalized. The 2 names are underlined separately when handwritten or in italics when typed. The dichotomous key is a pair of descriptions that leads to instructions or names that help us identify animals. So, here's your question for today. 1. In the binomial system, names must always be typed as follows. A. Both names in lowercase and in italics. B. First name in lowercase, second name in uppercase, and no italics. C. First name in uppercase, second name in lowercase, and both names in italics. D. None of the above.
To our guests, thank you very much for joining us in the studio today. To our listeners, this program was written by Shiva Kambata. Until next time, take care.
This program was brought to you by NAMCOL with funding from the Ministry of Education, Arts and Culture and the Commonwealth of Learning.